Hello, Kelly Bear here. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing a super fun tag by Quynn over at Lucid Moons. It's their first ever tag that they've created, and I just think I don't know, I'm such a film lover anyway, so I just had to jump on. This is the first chance I'm getting to film it, so I'm taking that time. The sun is actually shining as well, let's hope it stays that way. I will put the link to their original video down in the description box. They did tag me, so I'm glad that I spotted that so that I could take part, and I'm enjoying their channel in general, so I will also just put a link to their channel and their IG and everything, so you can go check them out because they're putting out some really cool stuff. So just before I jump into the tarot and tell you what the name of it is, although you will see from the title obviously, just some little housekeeping, shop stuff. I did a shop drop last week, and I do still have some bits and pieces in there. I've got some pouches, and I've got my notebook covers, one of a kind, hand painted and embroidered, quilted notebook covers, reusable notebook covers I should say, so you can put your own notebook in it and you can use it again and again and again. Awesome sauce, right? So yeah, that's the sort of self-promo stuff out of the way because your girl's got bills to pay. So the tag is called Tarot Through Movie Genres, and that's exactly what it sounds like. You're picking decks that sort of link up with the film genre prompts that Quynn has provided. Now, a little caveat, I'm a spooky bitch, so a lot of the stuff that I like is gonna skew spooky anyway, and I would argue that a lot of the films that I've picked could have also turned up in other categories, because I think it's very rare, especially nowadays, that you find a film that is just sort of you know, one genre. Most films will have like straddle at least a couple of sort of genres or movie types, but we use it as a sort of way to help us pick the films we want to watch, and you know, as we say that labels are useful, but also can be unuseful. Unuseful is not a word. Can also not be useful, but we need to categorize things in a certain way when it comes to searching for things, and that's when it becomes useful. And so there are 13 genres or types of film. We call them films here in the UK, but that doesn't count anymore because most film stuff is filmed digitally, isn't it? So I guess it's not on film anymore. Movies is more accurate, I guess. So I keep wanging this fucking ugly pencil about, but there you go. I am a fidgeter. And I will not apologise for it because it helps me concentrate. And I sort of do it absent-mindedly, honestly. So yeah, my little spooky bitch caveat out of the way. I'm gonna jump straight in. Now, I've limited it to like mentioning 3 or 4 films per genre, because otherwise this video would just be 2 hours of me listing off all the films that I love, because I love films. I watch a lot of films. I grew up watching a lot of films. My spouse is super into films. I have a lot of friends that are like real like hardcore movie heads. Going to the cinema is one of the things I really miss these days. Like I used to go to the cinema all the time. So yeah, I can't remember what my point was, so I'll just go. Sci-fi. Oh, that was it. I limited it to how many films that I mentioned, because we'll be here all fucking day. Question 1, or prompt 1, or genre 1, should I say, is sci-fi. Oh, yes, sci-fi. Love a bit of sci-fi. Some of my favourite sci-fi films are like older ones, so I really enjoy Alien, which is a prime example of a film that will cross genres, because it's a sci-fi. It's a horror, it's a thriller, it's, I guess you could also say that it is a bit, there's some action in there, so like it's a real sort of crosses a lot of genres, but it mostly gets seen as a sci-fi film because it's about aliens, and I think you get more sci-fi than aliens in space. So Alien, oh my god, still one of my all-time favourite films in the world ever, hell yeah. Blade Runner, oh my god, yes. Arrival, which Quynn actually mentioned, that film, I went to see that alone at the cinema, and that was quite a powerful experience. There was a powerful experience. Enunciate. And I remember, I think it was like a Tuesday morning, because they did, my local cinema, which has since closed unfortunately, they would do cheap Tuesdays, and it was like £3 or £3.50 for a ticket, and I was like one of like 2 or 3 people in the whole auditorium, and that was awesome. Some films I don't mind going and seeing in quiet spaces. Arrival is a really good example of that. But when it's like big blockbuster films, like all the like Marvel films of like comic book films, real action, like big blockbuster films, you know, it really benefits from like a really packed auditorium in my mind. And another one which is sci-fi, but in like it could also be classed as like a horror, but could also be classed as an action. Attack the Block. Still, just I watch it every October, usually actually multiple times a year. I had to stop myself from watching it last night. Actually, I ended up rewatching The Innkeepers instead, and I just love it. It reminds me of how I grew up, and like hanging out on council estates, and the way that my friends were, a lot of my friends were, and like just being up, getting, you know, like little scallywags. And yeah, it's a real London film, and though it's like South London, it still sort of does transfer to other bits of London, and John Boyega is just so good at it. So yeah, anyway, I'm just waxing lyrical. So decks, what sci-fi deck did I pick? So let me grab that to show you. Now I do have Tarot of the Silicon Dawn by Egypt Ernash, which is one that Quynn showed. So I wanted to pick something else, and actually when I was looking, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't really have any sci-fi, like proper what you would class as sci-fi decks, and I'm kind of like surprised. The one that is like mega like on my wish list, I can I has words, I don't know, I've already had like 2 caffeinated beverages today, which is more than I should have, and it's clearly done absolutely nothing for my brain box. But yeah, I is the Eldritch Overload Tarot that Sylvie over at Tarot Magpie, sorry Sylvie, shows all the time on her channel, on their channel. And it's just it's so cool. It's very pink, it's got like a TTRPG, tabletop RPG, role-playing game tie-in, and it's just so much fun. So the closest that I had to a sci-fi deck, and it does make me think of the Eldritch Overload actually, is this. The oh, knocking the bloody camera, apologies, is the Zeke's Arcana. So pink, it even has the pink metallic edging. So this is like my sort of airsats Eldritch Overload deck. It has a mixture of like very sort of fantasy and very surreal elements to it, but there are some sort of sci-fi-ish vibes to it. So I put some of those cards on the top to show you. So the tower has a freaking laser or something coming down to sort of break it apart, which feels very sci-fi to me. A lot of the courts, especially the queens, have this sort of fantasy meets sci-fi vibe to them, and what makes me think of this is the lines on their faces, which could be, you know, tattooed or painted on, but what it does actually make me think of is like, you know, lines, seams in robot, you know, in in androids and things like that, like constructs, human constructs, robots, where things sort of break apart. So like this seam, the face would break apart, and actually in this deck you do have things coming out of the faces of a lot of the court cards. I think most notably, possibly actually, the knights. So yeah, that sort of gives me a bit of a sort of sci-fi elven vibe. The justice card, I don't know why, it just has I don't know if it's like this sort of very shiny squared off, makes me think of circuitry. Another one that I did consider was the golden thread tarot, which is all sort of very looks like gold circuitry, but ultimately it didn't feel as sci-fi maybe as this. Again, you've got all these like natural and fantasy elements, but there just feels something sci-fi, and you've got like this backdrop of space and stars, and I always think of like space and stars can feel very sci-fi. We've got rainbow laser eyes, again, lasers. And the Hermit is probably the most sci-fi card in the deck, because you have what appears to be some kind of like space helmet, or like astronaut type helmet, and then they've got this crystal. So again, you get this real blending of like fantasy and sci-fi, and they've also got almost got like very sort of futuristic looking boots on. So yeah, that was probably the only deck in my collection that would have fit this, and that's kind of wild to me. I should remedy that for sure. I realised I forgot to actually read the prompt through. I just said sci-fi and didn't actually like give the rest of the information for the prompt that Quynn gives. But for sci-fi, the entire prompt is sci-fi, a deck that incorporates imaginative, speculative and or futuristic concepts. My apologies. So the second genre we're looking at is horror. A deck that scares, frightens or disturbs you. Now, oh my goodness, like I said at the top of this video, I am a spookily ookly girl. I love creepy, spooky, weird, dark, fucked up, unsettling, unnerving shit. Horror is my genre. Oh my god. And I mean like pretty much every single type of horror, I'm into it. I like sci-fi horror, as obviously just mentioned. I love folk horror. I love comedy horror. I love body horror. I love like just the old classic B-movie horror, like B-movie horror films. I'm into all of it. I really love paranormal horror and like spooky stuff. I'm a real fan of like psychological horror. I really enjoy films that are a really slow burn. So some of my favourite like horror films are films some people would describe as quite boring or slow, but you know, I just really enjoy a slow burn. I feel like it really ramps up the tension. And Alien could be, I've heard some people say that they find Alien boring because they say not much happens, you know, at the top, like at the good chunk of the film. I mean, I would argue that it doesn't. That's the whole point of ramping up the tension. But you know, and I love like bombastic horror as well, you know. I love me the silly stuff as well, like Evil Dead and like really bombastic over the top stuff. But some of my favourite horrors, it was, oh my god, like I literally could sit here for 2 hours just talking about my favourite horror films and I probably still wouldn't be done. So I just literally just had to pick a few that came off the top of my head. So The Witch, which I really enjoy. I think it's one of the best examples of folk horror to date, as is Midsummer. I really enjoy Aliens, which again could be classed as a sci-fi and an action thriller, but is still also a horror, and is so quotable. I quote it all the time. Game over, man, game over. I recently finally got around to watching Nope, which again could be argued as being a sci-fi or a mystery or a thriller or a horror. See what I mean? There's this crossover. I love Asian horror. I watched a lot of the like Tartan Asia Extreme was a company putting out a lot of Asian horror on DVDs in the early aughts, and I watched a lot of that. So things like A Tale of Two Sisters and the original, not the remakes, which I find sort of don't translate as well when you sort of westernize them, like, you know, The Grudge and Dark Water, stuff like that. And then there's those like body horror type, so like Lady Vengeance is one of those, which would be pretty intensely sort of body horror. Is it Audition? I still haven't seen Oldboy. Can you believe it? I've never watched Oldboy. I've still not watched like Train to Busan or any of that. Parasite, which I really need to fix. And John Carpenter's The Thing is a favourite of mine. I really love John Carpenter. So yeah, like horror. So I did have some spooky decks. I don't, for someone who is a spooky bitch, I don't actually have that many spooky decks, which is, I'm surprised. It's because I only allow myself to buy them in October, right? Or in September in time for October, even though I will use them all year round. It make sense. I don't know. But it feels like I'm like treating myself to a little present. I feel like I can justify getting a spooky deck around that time. But I don't always buy myself a deck every October, because either I feel like I've got too many decks that year, or because I just can't really afford it at the time. So, but it's the Cthulhu Dark Arts Tarot. That's Light's no good. It's quite a large, long tarot. It's a pip deck. And also I meant to read. I did tell you, a deck that scares, frightens, or disturbs you. I want to say it disturbs me. Honestly, the things that, like, horror doesn't really. Obviously, horror is meant to be disturbing and unsettling, but a lot of the stuff that I find unsettling is a lot of real world stuff. And obviously, horror can speak to the fears and the paranoias and the worries of the time. And actually, Quynn did a great job of touching on this in their video, actually. So it's well worth checking that out for them talking about it, way that like picks up on the zeitgeist. Horror, I mean, film generally as a rule, but horror I feel especially so. So I loved that they actually went into that. So I won't go over that myself, because I feel like they've already covered that. But it's, this is obviously based on the work of one very problematic, what's his chops, oh my god, my brain, Lovecraft. My god, Lovecraft. But yeah, this is like a horror based deck. Obviously the pips are kind of whatever. I guess I could have also picked the Del Toro tarot. Del Toro leans into Guillermo del Toro, for anyone. I guess that's another one that I could have picked, but again, it doesn't really sort of scare or frighten me. I just really enjoy it. So yeah, this is probably the most sort of unnerving horror spooky deck that I have. So that's my prompt for my deck for the horror prompt. Okay, prompt 3 is the one that I struggled with the most. It's romance, a deck that focuses on relationships or romantic love between people with an overall emotionally satisfying or optimistic tone. Well, I mean, romance films are fine, I guess. It's probably my least watched genre. Don't get me wrong, there's some really like over the top romantic films that I do enjoy, but generally as a rule it's not something that I'm going to watch. And I'm not really a rom-com kind of girl. It's just not my bag. So this was it's fairly easy for me to pick a deck, because I've got quite a few sort of soft romantic kind of style decks, but like picking films was a lot harder for me. So they might be a little out there as picks for horror films. I was just crossing out the horror and I was reading it, so I said it out loud, for the romance genre, but it's just the way I view it. So Love and Monsters, I guess, is kind of a sci-fi fantasy / very light horror film that you can catch on Netflix, which is about this guy going out in search of his love, and it's really, really sweet. And there's this, it ultimately has a really beautiful tone, but it doesn't end how you think it would, which I like. And it's not all like schmaltzy, and I'm not a schmaltz type kind of girl. Julie and Julia, I love that film so much. My goodness, I just love Meryl Streep anyway, and I love Stanley Tucci. But specifically and I know it's mostly about Julie and Julia, that they're the two main characters. But what I really enjoy is the relationship, the marriage between portrayed by Meryl Streep and Stanley Tucci. It's so it just really he really supported her so much, and just really gave her the space to be her. It's just so sweet. And if I remember correctly, they came into each other's lives later. It was a later marriage, and it's just that's the kind of romance that I like really down to earth, supportive. I'm not big into the overtures. There is a couple of films that does break that rule for me, and I'll get to those. And Much Ado About Nothing, the one with Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson. Obviously, it's a comedy drama, but it's also a romance. Obviously, there's some problematic elements with some stuff going on there, but ultimately, it's a really fun, romantic, silly romp. And yeah, again, I enjoy sort of those grounded types of romances, or those like really fun, playful enemies to lovers type things. And then Chocolat, which has Juliette Binoche and Alfred Molina and some Carrie Ann Moss and like a bunch of other people in it. It does have a certain someone in it that does put me off watching it now, and it just annoys me that he's in it, but he's not in it too much, so it's fine. But for me, it's not about that relationship that develops in the film. It's actually, for me, in the Chocolat, the film and the book, I really love the book as well, it's one of my favorite books, is that you get this town, this very small town in a rural part of France, after World War II. I think it's very early 50s. It's a very sleepy town, and Juliette Binoche's character rocks up with her daughter, illegitimate, unmarried. She's a single mum. She appears to be unmarried. Quelle surprise, sacré blah, you know, like, oh my goodness. And she doesn't celebrate, you know, Easter. She opens a chocolaterie in the middle of Lent. She doesn't go to church. It's a whole scandal. I love it. And she does not give two fucking shits, right? You've got Alfred Molina, who I love that guy. I love him acting. There's just something, I just love him. He's one of like my weird crushes. Anyway, Alfred Molina. He plays the Comte of and he's very, very strict within himself. He's very pious, and he very much disagrees with Juliette Binoche's character. But throughout the film, we get this melting of the ice, we get this warming of the heart, and Vian, who's the main character, Juliette Binoche, in the books, it's made much more clear that she is a witch. It's only sort of hinted to in the film, but in the book, it's much more explicit in that sense. She manages to sort of break down the walls of the people in this town, and these people start to fall in love with life and with community again, and there's relationships start to flourish and walls come down, and it's just it's such a feel-good film, and I do love it. I have it on DVD. I've watched it so many times, and it's just really much. Oh, Judi Dench is amazing in it as well. Like, it's a really understated performed film, but it's so beautiful, and it's very sort of sweet and funny, but without being cloying. I highly recommend it. Anyway, so the deck that I want to share, like, get on with it. This is going to be a long film. See what I mean? A long video, because I love film so much. I can't not get excited and talk about it. So who knows how long this is going to be. So I've picked out the Enchanted Tarot. This is the, I believe, 25th anniversary edition. So there's been a more recent edition that's come out. It's like more, it's quite wee. I think it's more like Fournier sized. Oh, hang on, I've got a call coming. That was a very important phone call that I could not miss. So I'm glad I spotted that popping up on my screen as I was filming. Rather than, if I'd been looking away at my screen, I wouldn't have seen it. But yeah, this feels very romantic. It's a art textile. I believe these are quite large tapestries, textiles with lots of embroidery and applique, made with various textiles, various fabrics that you can see here. There's like lace, and there's some sort of embroidery work going on here that might be on some kind of satin. It's very soft, and obviously when I think of fabric, there's that softness and that romantic feeling to it. There's lots of this sort of, you know, this is literally the suit of hearts for the suit of cups, so that's quite, you know, romantic in its own way. And it's very sumptuous, you know, very decadent, very voluptuous, which are all things I sort of think about when I think of like classic romance. Sensual, sumptuous, voluptuous, decadent. Again, these heart motifs. I mean, it's beautiful. But yeah, so that's that. I'm going to probably try and speed it up. The next prompt is Thriller, a deck that delivers tension, surprise, and/or a sense of impending doom and keeps you at the edge of your seat. I don't know if I quite have a deck like that, because if I had a deck like that, I don't know if I'd want it, because, you know, impending doom is not really the kind of vibe I want with a deck. Like, you can get a sense of impending doom depending on what cards turn up. I don't know. But yeah, thrillers, again, I like a lot of sort of sci-fi and horror that straddles that thriller vibe, but like more like classic thrillers would probably be like Barbarian Sound Studio, which I really enjoy, with Toby Jones. He's excellent in that. It's sort of riffs on the sort of the old giallo, the Italian giallo films tradition. And then like The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, the 1974 original, not the remake. And a film that I saw more recently that had Helen Hunt was one of the main characters in it, which really surprised me. It kept me guessing all the way through, which doesn't happen often. I'm really good at like working out what's going to happen in a film. It drives my spouse mad. They're like, how do you always know what's going to happen? Sometimes in the first half an hour of a film, I'm like, actually, I watched a film recently, and within the first 10 minutes, I went, he did it. And my spouse was like, what? And I'm like, he did it. And then we got all the way to the film, and it looked like it was like, oh, he didn't do it, haha, you were wrong. And then there was a twist, and it turned out he did do it. And he's like, how did they like the guy that did it? And my spouse was like, how the hell, how do you do that? I'm like, I don't know, I just got a vibe. So the deck that I am picking for thriller is the Vertigo Tarot. Unfortunately, this is out of date. This is the reissued one from about 2009. Out of date? Did I say out of date? Out of print, I mean. It's very glossy, but it's very dark, and it has this sort of moody thriller type vibe to it. Obviously based on Vertigo comics. And it's collage, but it feels like digital collage, not analog collage. But it's because it's like quite early digital collage, it has like this naive charm to it, which sort of more modern digital collage maybe doesn't quite have. Oh, I've got it all. Did I put it all back in order? Well, that's no good. So you can see you got real fire. Yeah, I put it all back in order, I think. Apologies. Apologies. Was it when I did I do a walkthrough of this? I can't remember. So we've got the cups, very blue, fire in the wands. But yeah, it has a real sort of tension to it, that can feel a little uncomfortable. Actually, another deck that does kind of make me feel sort of tense and uncomfortable is actually the Fountain Tarot, which is the opposite in this sort of to this deck visually, because it's very quite bright and airy and light. But yeah, that one could also maybe be a thriller deck for me, weirdly. Pentacles. Or maybe it isn't in order. I don't know. I don't use this deck very often. Partly because it is out of print and rare, but also because, yeah, it's just so freaking weird. And like, I have other decks that I don't always want to like have a brain workout, a noodle workout every time I do a reading. But there we go. Okay, so prompt 5 is Mystery, a deck that is mysterious, suspenseful, and doesn't reveal answers right away. Reading with this deck may feel like solving a puzzle. And like the two first decks that I thought of was the Thoth, but I was like, well, everyone knows what the Thoth looks like. And also the Voyager Tarot, but I've just shown a collage deck, and I thought, well, I'll try and sort of just mix it up a bit and show decks also that I don't always show on my channel. Obviously there'll be decks that I'm showing here that you folks see all the time on my channel if you watch them all the time, but I tried to pick some other ones as well just to keep it interesting, because I could have put, for some of these prompts, I could have picked like multiple decks, which is always the case, right? That's the whole point of having prompts, so you sort of have to narrow it down. That's part of the fun. I had so much fun like picking these out. I took about an hour to pick all these decks out. So mystery films. I enjoy a mystery. I love a good sort of crime mystery. Knives Out. Quynn mentioned Knives Out. I really enjoy it. I like both of the, I like Glass Onion as well, but Knives Out has that like old school mystery vibe because it's set in the old house, which I really, really enjoy. Shutter Island is a great mystery. Last Night in Soho, really enjoyed that. That's pretty mystery, though I did also guess the plot of that as well, annoyingly. And on a more like fun note, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which I watched so much as a kid that I knew it literally inside out, back to front, and would quote the lines all the way through the film every time I watched it, which was a lot. And I drove my poor mum, bananas doing that. And on a more sort of gothic / horror-y type mystery vibe, Crimson Peak, which I was almost picked as the romance, just to be like a little creep about it, but I didn't. And the deck that I've picked is the English Magic Tarot. This isn't a deck that I use very much. I've had it for probably about 8 years. It's one of those decks, when I was working with it more regularly, that there's lots of hidden... There's a lot of little sort of hidden bits of information. I don't know if you can see here, but there's things that are like written backwards. So if you get a mirror, you can read them. There's things written in runes that you can sort of translate. There's lots of nods to, like John Dee. And there's, here we got some more like backwards writing. So it's one of those decks that really benefits from, here we've got Ogham. Really benefits from either knowing a lot about English magic and occultism, and also especially sort of in the era that this is sort of based around, or just knowing how to read runes and Ogham and things like that. But yeah, it's definitely a puzzler, but it feels like it's a mystery, but it's not unsolvable. Does that make sense? Yeah, now I'm realising actually how cool this deck is. Isn't that funny? You don't use a deck for ages. You're like, oh yeah, actually, this is kind of cool. This is one of those on a whim decks that I bought because it was one of the only decks available in my local bookstore at the time, when I was just there to run errands. And I was like, obviously I magically fell into the bookshop. Oh no. And immediately went to like the spooky bitch section. And they had like they had like 3 decks, I think. They had one that was like some kind of fucking appropriative nonsense, like the Smithwaite, the horrible purple grungy looking one, like dirty thick lined one, and this, and I was like, well, looks like I'm gonna be buying this. So yeah, that's my answer for mystery. Prompt 6 is action, a deck that features loud, wild and spectacular imagery that may be overwhelming, but you love it anyway. I nearly picked the Tarot Illuminati, the visual vomit deck, as I lovingly call it, but it's gotten a lot of play on my channel over the years, so I decided to pick a different deck. Oh, films, action films. I do enjoy an action film. I've obviously previously mentioned the sort of the Marvel stuff, and I would say like things I used to watch as a kid, like Star Wars is sci-fi, but also like action, and Indiana Jones. A lot of these also can be very problematic. You look at we just finished watching, over the last couple of weekends, I've watched the first 3 Indiana Jones films. I refuse to acknowledge the existence of the newer ones, and yeah, some of the stuff has not aged well. But yeah, some of my favourite action films: Die Hard, the first one specifically, which is a Christmas film. I will not be taking any responses on that one. Avengers Endgame, that was one of those films that was such a moment in time, where I had been watching these films for 11 years, and the payoff of being in a packed audience and being like, having watched every single film to date and just being so invested and wanting to know what the hell was going to happen. Oh my goodness. And yeah, I mean, the final battle is just, yeah, there's a lot of fan service going on, but my god, we earned it, right? And it was just like the audience went bananas. It was so much fun. It was so exciting. What else? Hellboy specific. I do like Hellboy, the first one, but I love Hellboy 2 because I'm a fan of like the the whole Fae thing going on, and Prince Nuada is a hottie. The Matrix, I guess, is a classic. Jurassic Park is one that I rewatched for the first time in 20 years last October while I was away and in Scotland, and oh my god, it really still holds up and is still like, some of the stuff hasn't aged great, but the effects is not one of those things. And yeah, still just a solid, when it gets to the actual action, freaking solid film. But the deck that I'm showing is my own sort of lowbrow pop surrealist artwork deck that I put together from loads of different artists. This is not a deck you can buy. I'm really sorry. No, I won't make it available to people. I'm really sorry, because, you know, it's firstly the quality is not great because of some of the images that I took it from, but also because it's not for me to, like, I would never read for people with this. I would never charge for this. Like, it's completely, and it's so very specific. I spent like about a year collating images, so it was a real labor of love, and it's very personal. The one annoying thing is when I ordered it, I put it as the font being size 12, because I was thinking of like Word documents, right? And it came, and that to me is not size 12 on a Word document, and I just had been waiting for it for so long. I was like, I can't even bring myself to be like, yo, can you, like, I should have though, really, when I think about it, can you like send me another copy, because this is not the size font that I picked. But I felt like they'd be like, well, our size 12 is different to like you know, regular size 12. I don't know. So I've got like little symbols, and if you can see, there's a Q and a little sword. So this is the Queen of Swords. So yeah, this is my, I just realized I'd be doing that thing where I hold all the cards up when I could just, like, you know, just do this thing where you get to see more of the cards by placing them. Like, this is the Ace of Cups. Yeah, it's so cute. We have the Nine of Cups here, which is leaning into a slightly more decadent oh, there's like chunky oxalotl, like creepy oxalotl. Oxalotls are never creepy, except for here in my experience. Here we have Temperance. I picked this card for Temperance. You see what I mean? Like, it's very personal. Oh, look at these little guys. I love them. This is the Ten of Wands. Three of Swords. I just thought it was a different and interesting interpretation, because it was giving me like anatomical heart vibes, but it's really, I don't know. So yeah, the choices are very personal, and it's so the oh, I should say, yeah, the images can be overwhelming, but I love it anyways. So it's a bit overwhelming because it's all different art styles from different artists, which isn't usually my bag, but because I really I made it myself, it like works for me, because I picked these for the associations that I have with the artwork. And then you know, it can be, some of them are really like over the top. This is my Devil card. This one makes me think of the show Hannibal. I just, you know, this is obviously the Nine of Swords. But yeah, some of the images are way more busy than others, and I really love it. And it's so nice having a deck that is just no one else in the world has. It's just picked all just for me, and I edged it in all different colors of highlighter pen, so it's really fun, and the backs are really cool. So yeah, that's my action deck. Prompt 7 is Fantasy, a deck that transports you to an imaginary world with magic, mystical creatures, or elements of the supernatural that don't exist in the real world. I grew up watching a lot of fantasy. The Dark Crystal is the first one that comes to mind because it had such a huge impact on me. Labyrinth as well, but specifically Dark Crystal is one of my favourite films. It's still one of my favourite films. It's informed so much of how I am and who I am and the things that I love. Brian Froud's like creature design, fairy stuff, it just is so cool. And then it's like it's twinned with Jim Henson's workshop, which, you know, growing up watching all the like Henson stuff, oh, I just love it. Hook was another film that I enjoyed in my tweens. That came out in 1992, I think, so I would have been 11. I really enjoy that sort of, you got all the pirates and the Lost Boys, and it's very camp and fun. And I love Robin Williams. Robin Williams was such a part of my childhood and teens. Lord of the Rings, can't have fantasy about Lord of the Rings. What, oh my god, what a moment in time that was. Where the Wild Things Are, which is, I feel like, a really beautiful, impactful film as well. So those are some of my favorite fantasy films. There's so many of the 80s that I watch, you know, like Legend and, you know, The Never-Ending Story and Krull and The Princess Bride, you know, like just all that stuff. Willow. But yeah, that was really my jam as a kid. The Last Unicorn. Oh, so much. And I couldn't help myself, so I had to share Brian Froud Fairies Oracle. This was the second deck I ever bought. My first tarot was Osho's Zen, and my first oracle was this. So this, I think this was released in like 1999 or 2000, and I distinctly remember when I went into the shop, when I went to the counter, the person at the counter saying, "Oh, this is just new in." So that I literally was like, you know, right there, because I literally saw the box and I was like, I recognize that artwork, and then I saw the name Brian Froud and went, yep, and I literally yanked it off the shelf. Thank you, yes please, I will be having that. This is just this is what to me fairies are, because I did grow up with like flower fairy stuff, you know, the Victorian fairies, which are very sort of cutesified, and you've got like the Disney-fied Tinkerbell. I mean, Tinkerbell's kind of mean though if you watch the Disney version. She's a little bit of a bitch, and that's all right. The only thing that does bother me is that the backs are one of the cards, which I wish decks wouldn't do. Don't put writing on the backs of your cards, and don't use one of the cards as the back of your fucking card. That's like my only like real, you know, the cardstock's not great either, but it's been fine. I've had it for like nearly 25 years, so but I love it. This is how I view the Fae. I've got all the, I think, did I put it back in order? I can't remember. No, I didn't. This is one of my favourites. Gorgeous. There's so many beautiful, and like the Dark Lady, I mean, spooky. Oh, the Sage, I mean, oh, it's so good. There's some really cute ones as well, as you would expect. Yeah, and I just love it. It really just, it takes me back to my childhood more than any other deck that I own. And it reminds me of like when I would just escape into that world of like the Dark Crystal and fairies and magic and oh yeah. Oh. So yeah, that's my fantasy pick. Okay, so prompt 8. Comedy, a deck that is humorous, amusing, or induces laughter and or a sense of enjoyment. I mean, I'd say most of my decks induce a sense of enjoyment, but decks that make me laugh, yes, that's, I guess there's that's like a slightly different thing. I love me some comedy, especially comedy horror, surprise surprise. So things like, you know, Shaun of the Dead, Death Becomes Her, Beetlejuice. I also love me Monty Python, specifically Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Again, so quotable, as is The Life of Brian, which I do also enjoy, but the Grail is my favourite Python film. Comedy films that I grew up with as a kid, like stuff like The Goonies, which I guess is kind of spooky but also funny, and like Ghostbusters, which is spooky but funny. It's a comedy, right? It's all like SNL guys. What else would be, I mean, I just mentioned Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was in a different category, but is a comedy as well, I guess. What else did I watch that was funny? I like the Beverly Hills Cop films. I just like Eddie Murphy with that laugh. I don't know, such a feature of my childhood. But yeah, I love me comedy, especially like a dark comedy. They're my favourite. And so it might surprise some of you, but probably none of you, that the deck that I'm picking is arcane bullshit. I nearly picked Tarot de Marseille Paul Parcar because it's so dark, but I mean, this one is like full on, absolutely up the wazoo bananas, hilarious. Urinal death, hang in there. Penis weasel. Shitty acoustic guitar guy. I think I showed a bunch of these recently because I put this away because I kept using it. I kept working with it. And I was like, I need to put it away and pull a different bloody oracle decks. This is ridiculous. The Gross Cup. Oh, they get all the mixed up. I just go with it. Werewolf and pig making out. Why not? Oh, here we go. See? It's probably nothing. This is one of those like really weirdly unnerving decks. An eagle chained to a calf because, of course, vengeance. Really though, I get really good readings with this. Weirdly, it's and it encourages you not to take yourself or life too seriously all the time. We do have to be serious in life, you know, to a certain extent, but sometimes you just need a break. The coffin full of tacos, full of snakes. Chaos Mom. The Bird Book snake thing. I mean, hello. The rat trout. You know, Lord of the Hunt. What? Galaxy Dad. Chaos Mum and Galaxy Dad, I mean. The Decision Maker. I mean, this makes sense, right? Giving birth to a skull. I mean, technically, anyone that gives birth to a fully developed child or mostly developed child is giving birth to a skull, except in very unfortunate cases. So yeah, but you know what I mean. So yeah, that's my comedy one. Oh my god, this film is gonna. I keep calling it a film because I'm talking about films. This video is going to be a month of Sundays long. Drama, a deck that focuses on conflicts in characters' lives that takes a more serious tone. I don't know if there's any. I have a deck that sort of focuses on the conflict between people's lives, but I sort of picked as best as I could. So for drama, I like dark drama, sort of horror dramas, drama thriller type stuff, and things that came to mind: A Single Man, Ex Machina, which is a great film. I love Oscar Isaac. The Green Knight, which again is kind of like fantasy but is also a drama. Titanic. It's a classic, but it's also classed as a romance, I guess, but it's dramatic. And I was one of those kids that was like obsessed with the Titanic. I was one of those weird kids that was morbidly obsessed and would learn facts about the Titanic. And I went to see the Titanic because I was so interested I'd heard that there was lots of historical accuracy with regards to the ship being built to 2/3 scale, and they'd gotten the same people to build the staircase, and they'd gotten the original blueprints, and then the costuming. Oh my god. And it ended up, I enjoy it more now as an adult than I did when I was a teenager, because I was too cool to think it was a good film, if that makes sense. I enjoyed it in a it's a really good. It's actually quite good historically, little snippets of conversation that you hear some of the characters saying, or conversations that were reported to have been had on the deck. And they sing the hymn that they sing to those in peril, for those in peril on the sea, was actually the last hymn that they sung on their Sunday service, that kind of thing. But now I sort of can enjoy it as for what it is. Anyway, all that being said, The Darkness of Light Tarot. I think this is the 2nd edition. Let's see if I can get some light on there. It's so hard to get the lighting right in these videos, but yeah, this feels kind of moody and dramatic. It's dramatic, right? It's definitely not whimsical. It definitely has a more serious tone. There's not really anything fun or funny or necessarily joyful about this deck. It definitely feels quite, I'd say that's more ecstatic than joyful. So moody. This makes me think of The Lighthouse, which is another great film. I love anything by Eggers. So good. And Ariadne does some good stuff. Flanagan as well. I want to see more female horror stuff though. Don't see enough, at least in the mainstream. More so indie, but not mainstream. So yeah, it's very moody, and this is more of, for me, this is definitely more like a end of autumn and then into winter kind of deck. It's a straight up Smithwaite essentially. It's very beautiful. I like that it's mostly borderless. Yeah, so that is my sort of dramatic prompt deck. Okay, the next prompt is documentary. Documentary. That was very Moira Rose. It almost went a bit Moira Rose there. Documentary. A deck that depicts real life people, animals, events, or situations that may be educational or informative. I used to watch a lot of documentaries when I was younger. I don't anymore. I don't know if it's because I don't really sit down, when you have scheduled TV and not streaming services, it's easier to sort of sit down and watch. So I used to watch all sorts of documentaries on BBC One and BBC Two and Channel 4, probably, BBC Two and Channel 4 probably best known for documentaries over the years. But yeah, and I think now if I'm listening to anything that's sort of true crime or cult or spooky, anything like that, I'm usually gonna listen to podcasts over watching a documentary, because I can do stuff whilst, I just realised I'm just talking and there's a blank thing because I'm being rubbish. It's easier for me to do stuff whilst whilst listening about these things. And I can't really do nature documentaries, as I mentioned in a more recent video, because they make me cry. But some documentary series that I really enjoyed, I saw it about 10 years ago, but it is about 20 years old. In fact, I think it is exactly 20 years old, and it's Francesco's Venice. So it's Francesco de Mosto. He's a guy from the De Mosto. He's from the De Mosto family, which is a Venetian family going back centuries. And it's 4 parts. It's like Blood, Beauty, Sex, and Death are the 4 episodes. And it goes through the history of Venice. Venice is a place I've always wanted to go. I find it fascinating. Francesco's accent through the whole through the whole series is delicious to listen to. Oh my goodness. And yeah, it's really, really interesting. And what other documentaries do I enjoy? Oh, the one about the Sparks brothers. That was a fun documentary that I've seen in the last year or two. That was really good because they're just so much fun. And then what I do love is a mockumentary. I fucking love a mockumentary. So probably like 2 that I can really enjoy. This is Spinal Tap, which is a classic. And maybe What We Do in the Shadows, the mockumentary, which I know is really hit and miss with people. A lot of people prefer the show to the mockumentary. I love both. I enjoy both just as much. So that's documentary. So the choice is for me because it's sort of featuring real people, real life events. I'm picking The Gay Marseille by Charlie Claire Burgess. I am loving this deck so much. Oh my god. This does feature real people. Perfect example. Here we have Frida Kahlo. It also features the real life experiences, or illustrates the real life experience of, being queer. And I really enjoy that aspect to it. The book will just blow your freaking socks off. If you are a Marseille reader and you want a fresh perspective on the Marseille, and hear some like different ideas about it, I think you can now, I don't know, I need to double check, but you can get the book. There's a separate book. You get like a little, you can buy a separate book, basically. I don't want to keep going off on tangents. It's really great. So this does feature real people, which I enjoy. Not every character is a real person, but it does speak to real life, like lived queer experiences, because it's a deck by a queer creator as well. And it's just, the colours are delicious. It speaks to sort of the trans experience. It talks about Stonewall and polyamory and breaking down gender binaries and it's just so good. It's just so good, and just like reveling in queerness. And I just really, really love it so much. It's become very dear to me in a very short space of time. So that is actually my weirdly my documentary pick. Let me just grab these. Love the colour of these backs. Yum yum. Prompt number 11, animated film, a deck with bright, expressive or cartoon-like images that you probably would have enjoyed as a kid and still love as an adult. I'm going to be like really basic and be like anything by Studio Ghibli, pretty much. There's a few caveats to that. My favourite is probably Spirited Away. I do also, again, being really basic, I do really love Howl's Moving Castle and My Neighbour Totoro. But those are very popular for a reason, right? I really love anything Wallace and Gromit. Unsurprisingly, my favourite probably being The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. It's so funny. More of a recent one, I would say, is Nimona. I really, really enjoyed that very much. Really, really fun. So yeah, I love me a bit of animated stuff. I watch a lot of cartoons even now, like Owl House, and what else have I been watching? I really want to watch Has Been Hotel, but I'm waiting till I finished Owl House on that. Hilda, Centaur World. Like I do enjoy like cartoons, animations made for adults as well, but I do still actually watch cartoons made for kids, and I don't care, and anime and stuff. So yeah, the deck that I've picked for this is the Playful Heart Tarot from Kitten Chops. because it is so cute and so colourful and so fun and so childlike and so joyful, and it doesn't shy away from the like darker aspects of life. It still manages to portray them in a way that works for this deck. The characters are just so freaking cute. I just want to squeeze and pinch their little cheeks. It's delightful. It's absolutely delightful. This is Smith Waite based. There's also a Marseille based called the Pipspeak. I still don't have that. There's a number of Marseille decks I would still like to get. I just, you know, your girl has limited means. So yeah, that is my animated film selection. Prompt 12, Western, a deck that embodies a spirit of freedom, exploration, and adventure. The first thing that actually popped to mind for a film was Firefly, based off of the TV series Serenity, because that's always been pitched as like a sci-fi, a Western in space, sorry, but is also a sci-fi film that ties into a series, and again is a film that I really, really enjoy. But I just generally thought of like, you know, there's loads of, I used to grow up watching a lot of Westerns, but, you know, there's a lot of problems, as, you know, Quynn mentioned in their own video, with a lot of the classic Westerns. I guess you've got things like The Quick and the Dead and Wyatt Earp, those sort of like 90s kind of Westerns, but I sort of went out there a little bit and just picked ones that make me think of like dry, hot spaces. I did think like Raising Arizona, but I ended up picking a different Coen Brothers film because I can't not mention a Coen Brothers film, and that is No Country for Old Men, which is probably the toughest Coen Brothers film I've ever seen. It's a hard watch, but it's really, really good. Oh my goodness. Mad Max Fury Road. Oh, my favourite Mad Max film thus far. I've not seen the new one with Anya Taylor-Joy. I'll get around to that eventually. Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. That's another very sort of, I mean, you know, it's the spirit of fucking bollocking, can I speak, embodies a spirit of freedom, exploration and adventure. Come on, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And like, I guess to another extent, which is like its American counterpart, which is To Wong Fu with Love, Judy Newmar, which is also a film that I really enjoy. I love both of them just as much. So my pick for this is the fuck me, the blah, can I speak? Clearly not. The Pathfinder's Oracle by Skull Garden. It's specifically a very sort of desert based deck. It's in this sort of diamond, square on its side diamond shape. It's not a true diamond shape because it's got equal sides, but it's very, very deserty. And I've sort of taken this because I do have some links with the desert. Like I went on a road trip when I eloped to get married. We went on me and my spouse went on a road trip, and we traveled through, you know, we traveled from LA to Nevada to get to Las Vegas, and we drove back a different way, and we went through like Death Valley and all that stuff. So I've been to like the Devil's Basin and stuff like that. Real interesting experience. And we ended up going through and staying in Yosemite. So yeah, I do have some, and I you know, I've mentioned before as well, like visiting Cairo when my sister used to live there, because she was engaged to a half Egyptian guy. So yeah, like, this is like snowy, but it's still the desert, right? This is what I thought of immediately, was the deck that came to mind. But I see this as more of like a dreamscape, as a way of me being able to access this more, feeling more related to it, relatable to me as a person. It's a weird other realm, desert-like other realm. And actually, like, there is a card that is like a doorway. And a really good way to work with this deck if you're path working is to like place the doorway and then put the card that you want to work with it next to it. So you step through, there we go, the door, and then into the card. So yeah, that is my Western pick. Let's get all these little cards. I love the shape of it. It's really fun. You could do some really fun stuff with this deck, especially because you've got the different sort of moon phase orientation situation going on. Oh, that rhymes. Okay, this is the final prompt. 13 black and white film, your favourite black and white deck, or a vintage deck from another era. Oh, black and white films. Again, it's not really, as Quynn says in their video, it's not really a genre. It's sort of like just because people still choose to make films in black and white, but back in the day it was kind of one of the only options, or the cheaper option. I would say I mean, I grew up in the era where like black and white films were always on the TV on a Saturday and Sunday afternoon, especially on a Sunday afternoon. I like old classics really make me think of my mum being absolutely exhausted and falling asleep on the sofa, and my sister falling asleep on the sofa with her, and I'd be left to my own devices, and I could like go play Lego and like do drawing or read, or I'd just sit and watch whatever like old film that my mum had fallen asleep watching. Some of my favourites are quite funny, I guess. In fact, I think all of my favourite black and white films are funny. So like Kind Hearts and Coronets, Lavender Hill Mob, The Lady Killers. Incidentally, all of those actually star Alec Guinness, who was, I guess, a real feature of my childhood as well. Some Like It Hot, the original like black and white version, is like a classic, and I guess kind of problematic in some ways these days, but when you like think of the ending, it actually does have an ending that is like, yeah, okay, fine, for the people involved, which is really quite refreshing for the time. Yeah, there's other film like classics like The Maltese Falcon, and gosh, so many. I could just stand here and mention a load of decks. I don't own any like just straight up black and white tarot decks. I have black and white oracle, but I wanted to show a tarot deck that is like probably my most recent tarot deck because I haven't shared it on here yet. So it's a deck from another era, and it is the Visconti Sforza. This is the Mary Packard version, the kit, because it's easier to see the cups, for example, on the court cards, because they get a little lost in some of the other depictions. What's happened here? It's gotten all mixed up. What have I done? Blimey neck. Oh, I don't know. Have I? I don't think I've really shown this deck yet. Have I? I can't remember. But yeah, this is my most recent, because I was like, how do I not have a Visconti Sforza deck? This is terrible for someone who loves tarot so much. So I managed to get one really, really cheap. Yeah, they're basically giving it away essentially, so I was like, I'll have that, thanks, free shipping and all. Yeah, you good old eBay. So yeah, this is obviously a reproduction of a original Visconti. There's 3 cards I think that have sort of had to be sort of created because they were missing from the full pack, the full deck. But it's beautiful, and I think it's been really well done. That's one of the things I do find quite interesting with like the Viscontis and the old Italian decks, the Renaissance decks, is seeing the choices that people make for the missing cards and how they illustrate them. And depending on which deck is being recreated, different cards will be missing. But yeah, so this is my black and white, or sort of vintage choice. So a little off the wall, I guess, but not that much. Oh my god, I'm looking at this video is going to be so unbelievably long. Strap in, or I guess too late to say that. I decided though, because I'm annoying, I had a couple of other like genres come to mind, and I found like, there was decks that like, basically I was looking through my decks and I was like, oh, this would really go with this genre, but it's not on the list. And then there was another one was like, I feel like this would really go with this genre, but it's not on the list. So I've added 2 because I'm annoying. So I'm just the first extra prompt, I'm really sorry Quynn, I hope you don't mind, is disaster movie. I don't watch disaster movies anymore because the whole world is like, you know, there's always been disasters going on around the world, there's always been injustices going on around the world, but it just feels like because we now have access to it and we can more readily see it, it means that you're more aware of it. There's 24-hour news, which never used to be a thing before 9/11 essentially. The world has infinitely gotten more awful, especially in the last like 4.5-5 years, with stuff kicking off with the penny. Like, it's just been like, I don't need to be watching fucking disaster films, but there are some classics, right? So The Day After Tomorrow is one that I actually think is pretty good. 28 Days Later, which is also a horror, but is also a disaster film, essentially. Twister, which is a film I saw at the cinema, and it popped into my head because there's like a new Twister film. It looks quite bad, but also I kind of want to see it because I don't know. I have a thing about storms and stuff. I used to watch those like storm chaser programs when they used to be on. Unfortunately, a couple of those people have been killed by twisters, which is very unfortunate and sad. But that's, I guess, they know what they're getting into when they're chasing storms. It's very different to people being, sorry, I'm grabbing a glass and my rings of glass clonking on the glass. Obviously they wreak exceptional damage, but there's just something also incredibly captivating. It's that staring into the void, right? Just sort of facing something just so unbelievably, something we just can't control, and it's awe-inspiring, but in the most horrific kind of way. So yeah, the deck that I've picked for that is actually the Next World Tarot, because just because there's been a disaster doesn't mean that things can't be positive. And this is called the Next World Tarot because it's looking at where do we go from here. We are unequivocally hurtling towards climate collapse. We are still in a pandemic that governments have failed to let people know is still going on. We're currently in a massive COVID surge in the UK at the moment. It's not seasonal because it's just, there's no mitigations to it, so it just keeps going round and round and round, and the more you catch it, the more damage it does. And I know people will probably switch off at this point, but unfortunately, if we keep ostriching ourselves and putting our head in the sand, it's not going to end well. Unfortunately, it's best to look at the situation as it truly is, if we're going to do anything about it, and that is not just with the panini, but with the climate. With the multiple genocides going on around the world, with the way that like capitalism is just, we are in the end stages of capitalism, like the death throes. But this deck really speaks to where we go from here. It's really about building community, building support systems locally, mutual aid, and it needs to be fully inclusive. I'm aware that Pride Month is over now. We're in July as I'm filming this. It's actually the 4th of July. I got up, I was at my polling station to vote as soon as it opened. What was I saying? I can't remember what I was saying now, but yeah, it's so important to think of new ways of being, because we're going to have to, essentially. And it sounds very doomer, but it's really bad, and it's been bad for certain groups of people. Oh, that was it. It's been bad for certain groups of people for a really long time. The people that are often like cut out of history, ignored, not listened to. And so although it was Pride Month last month, this month it's Disability Pride Month this month. So those of us that live, like myself, with chronic illness or disability, are asking people to include us in your justice work, which does, unfortunately, I'm going to say, like, involves wearing a mask. I complained about not being able to go to the cinema really anymore because there's no safety things in place. And some people say, well, just tough tits, let's just stay at home. But I can't just stay at home, and there are things that I have to do, like I have to access public transport, I have to access healthcare, I have to be able to go get groceries. None of these things are, at least those things need to at least be safe, right? And they're not. And so a lot of us are kind of sick and tired of people just putting their head in the sand, unfortunately. And I get it, right? It sucks. It fucking sucks. People are like, oh, it's still going on. The annoying thing is, if governments had taken it seriously to begin with, and had been really hard on the messaging and the science, rather than politicizing it, we could very well have been out of it by now, but we're here. So yeah, anyway, that was my can I help having a rant, as I always say in a video? Maybe not. So it's probably something that people don't want to listen to, but it's actually important to listen to. And sort of disabled and chronically ill folks have been saying that it's been heading this way for a while, and it has, much as with, like, you know, the global south are dealing with the effects of big corporations wrecking the environment in the global north, and it's the global south that are currently dealing with the effects of it. And currently there's been a hurricane going through the Caribbean and just wrecking everything, and it's, you know, all the people that could go off on their yachts and just leave everyone in the shit that are there, that live there, have done. The world is such a fucked up place. There we go. So that felt like an appropriate rant for disaster. And finally, let's end on a fun note, because it's not all doom and gloom. We need to find pockets of joy. We need to be able to build new worlds. I think I lost the thread of what I was saying about this deck, but this deck is very much about like building new worlds when stuff starts to collapse, which it's currently doing. So yeah, you know, Toni Morrison also talked a lot about, like, it's so important to keep creating art even when everything is awful, and art can often speak to, you know, the situations around the world, the political zeitgeist, the just general whatever is going on. And so I decided to include a category for musicals. Now, I'm not your classic musical girl. I don't like Broadway theatre. I'm not like a musical theatre kind of girl. I don't like your like typical musicals. Obviously, I watched like musical Disney films as a kid, but like as an adult, I'm like not that. It's not really my bag. There are a couple of classic musicals that I enjoy. I think probably Singing in the Rain is the most sort of mainstream classic musical that I enjoy. I enjoy the like adult musicals that are more sort of, I love Moulin Rouge, but it's so like over the top, in your face, ridiculous, right? So Moulin Rouge is one of them, because it is actually very queer and over the top and ridiculous, and it's got a lot of contemporary songs, and it was doing something really, really interesting. Rocky Horror Picture Show, Cabaret, yeah, those are my kind of bag, really. It's things that have like are really just ridiculous or a bit naughty and kinky, or have like, you know, talking about you know, Nazis equals bad, you know, obviously. So the deck that the way that I'm tying this into this prompt, like picking a deck, is the deck that makes your heart sing. And I think most people would be able to guess which deck that's going to be, so I'm just going to get that. So ultimately it's like the deck that just has your heart or forever and always, and for me that is, yes, the Tarot of the Magical Forest. Are you sick of it yet? I don't blame you if you are. This deck makes me so happy. It's so cute. It's a straight up Smith weight. I trimmed mine, which is why it's small and has no titles, because it's a Smith weight, it's so easy to read. Oh, my little Hermie. It's adorable. It gives me cute aggression, as you can tell. It's really nurturing. It was a gift from my partner. I've had it for 10 years this year. I love it so much. I love the characters. I know it inside out and back to front. I know every single card is like emblazoned on my brain, and I just love it so much. It's so precious to me. I keep meaning to like pick up a backup version of this, but this particular copy is like, you know, it won't be the same if I ever need to use a backup copy or buy a backup copy, you know what I mean? And then having this for almost 10 years, it's so infused with so many readings and so much love and so much just, it's like almost, it sounds so silly because it's such a cutesy fun deck, but it just hums with magic for me. It's so like, it's so scuffed. It's got bits of like, and it's not really showing up on the camera, but in real life, like this deck is like looking a little worse for wear. So I don't want to jinx myself, but actually nothing has so far. The cardstock's held up, but again, I think this, like, I use this deck a lot, but I think because I do have so many other decks, you know, it doesn't get as worn as it would have if it was one of like maybe 3 or 4 decks that I'd had the last 10 years and used all the time. So wow, okay, I don't even know how long this video is, because I had to pause it to answer a phone call. This is done in two lots, and I don't know where I was before I had to pause it. So anyway, that is that. I will put all the information in the description box below, in the prompts and Quyn's original video. Go check their channel out. It is awesome. Thank you, Quynn, for making this really fun tag. I'm so sorry this is such a long video. I can never just, it's just a topic that I'm just so like, that I love so much. Honestly, I could I just could talk about it for hours, truly. Yeah, thank you for tagging me. It was really cool. It's nice when someone tags you, like, oh, that's a nice surprise. Thank you. So thank you for thinking of me. Yeah, and I hope that wherever you are watching this video, that you are safe and you are well. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.